Coming up next, Tresa Salters from Parent Information Network. Good afternoon and welcome to Picking Up the Pieces, where we dare to persevere and help young adults reach their full potential. This afternoon, we're welcoming Tresa Salters from the Parent Information Network. We're very excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start off as we always do here on Picking Up the Pieces. Tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Tresa Salters, and I'm a single mom. I have two, I guess they're both young adults now. My daughter's a senior in high school, and my son is 20 and is going to be going off to mobile tech training school soon.
Fantastic.
So that's exciting. And I live in Kingston, and I don't know, what else do you want to know about me?
That's a great start. That's a great start.
Okay.
So let's learn about Parent Information Network, because they're a unique resource really for parents.
We are. The Parent Information Network is a Department of Mental Health funded program in the southeast part of the state. We're managed by BAMSI. And the unique thing about us is that we are run by parents with lived experience. And we offer support to parents of children that have mental health challenges, behavioral, emotional disturbances. We do support groups, a lot of trainings and educational programs, really to help empower the parents and educate them so they can be better advocates for their own children.
Fantastic. So it's really, that's a key thing for parents, just to be able to say, wow, you're struggling with that, and your kid experienced that, and now your kid's going off to college or going off to a great tech school or is doing great things or in a stable relationship and in stable housing. So it's important both to help educate parents and then hope to inspire parents too, to see that there is hope, that kids do get through these things and that there are resources and there are strategies that help kids with mental health issues be successful and thrive.
Absolutely.
That's really important. And what is your role there?
My role is Parents of Transitional Age Youth Coordinator. We refer to it as PTA. It's a little bit less of a mouthful.
Okay.
And I work specifically with the parents of the kids that are older. We have parent coordinators in all of our areas that work with parents of kids all ages, but mine is really specific to parents to help them with that transition from high school to adult life and whatever that brings. So I work with parents of kids up to age 25.
Now, why is it so important? Because a lot of my shows, we advocate for support directly for young adults and a lot of peer support for young adults. Why is it so important to help the parents of young adults with mental health issues?
Well, it's a really challenging thing to have a kid, you know, whatever age, that has mental health challenges. And parents are really the biggest support for these kids. You know, the providers and the different programs are going to come and go, but the parents are the ones that are always there. And so if we can offer them the support to be there for their kids and to know that they're not alone and that they can continue to advocate for them even though when they are older, it helps the whole family.
Absolutely, and that's such an important point, that the parents are very consistently there. And no one ever sets out to want to be a bad parent. Everyone wants to be a good parent, but they might not have the resources or the skills or the supports that they need. And so if you can help provide that infrastructure and the support for the parents, it's going to ultimately support the young adult and help the young adult, or you're right, at any age, help the whole family move forward. That's really important.
Definitely.
So let's talk about, do you have some examples of families that you've supported that have made a difference in their lives?
Well, there's so many families. I mean, we support so many families. You know, the Southeast is a big area, and lots of families. I've been here for about 4.5 years, and I have to say that, you know, some people stay with us for a long time. Some people come and use our services and supports when they need them and kind of move on. But lots of families, I've seen families, you know, a single mom that I've worked with whose son was really struggling in high school. He ended up actually quitting school, but then he went on and got his GED. Mom was kind of struggling with their relationship, but she was able to set some really good boundaries and rules at home. By coming to our support groups and using our support and some of the workshops that we offered, she got stronger and things at home became safer, and it just became a better place for everyone. You know, then there's other families who I've helped support the kids through the high school process. Maybe they were struggling in the school placement, and we helped to really help them with the IEP process and get them into a better school placement. And I've seen lots of kids who've graduated successfully from a therapeutic program that they did much better in than they did in the public school.
Absolutely. So supporting, there is such a myriad of choices. There's so much confusion. Even, you know, if you have, no one has a normal child, right? They'd be boring. They'd like floss their teeth 6 times a day, do hospital quarters on their bed. They'd be boring. So I don't know any normal children, normal people in general. Yeah, if I did, they'd be kind of boring. But the average young adult needs a lot of support. Even the average child, just to find the right school, especially here in Boston Public Schools, navigating that system. So if you have a child with special needs or a child that needs more a customized support piece to that. We had a young adult from Solstice program on a couple weeks back, and she talked about how Solstice really helped her move forward because it dealt with her whole self, not only her behavioral challenges that she had, not only her academic challenges, but her whole self. It was a very holistic approach. It was a strength-based wellness approach, and it really made the difference for her and her recovery and helped her move forward, and she's doing fantastic. So looking at that piece and supporting parents to help make that right choice for their young adult is fantastic.
And just educating them too. I mean, we do a lot of workshops and trainings on the IEP process and that, you know, transition planning, so that the parents are educated and they feel empowered. They can go into a school meeting, you know, we'll go with them to support them, but they're the ones that go in and advocate for their kids, and we just give them the resources so that they can do a better job.
Right, absolutely, because there's so much to sift through. You've got so much information coming at you. People say, well, there's no instruction booklet for raising kids, and there's so many resources that you don't know which one's the right one. Yeah. And let's remind people what an IEP is, because we've got lots of alphabet soup.
Individual education plan. Right. And that's the thing about it that's so important. It's individual, so every kid is different and every kid has different needs. And if you know the process and you take it step by step, you know, the kids get what they need. And when they find the right placement and they're getting the right accommodations, they thrive. And they really, really do well. I've seen kids who've gone from struggling, you know, because they just didn't have the right things, to getting the right things lined up and in place, and all of a sudden everything just clicks for them and they do really well, and a lot of them really are successful and graduate, and we've had kids going on to college that have done really well. Yeah,
no, it's amazing. My tagline of our former show, which was Employment for All, is everyone can be successful for the right supports.
It's so true.
It's unbelievable when you see that click. I mean, that's why I train, that's why I work with young adults, because you can see that click when they figure out what they want and they figure out what supports they need to achieve it. Well, you just have to take a step back and let them do what they need to do, because that's what it's all about. But it's it's building the rapport with the young adult through the family and through the providers, so they trust you enough to tell what they really want and ask for what they really need. Yeah. And that's a key piece. We had another young woman that said the same thing. She said, I had to get to a place where I could ask for support and accept it. And she really said to the young adults, and her kind of final words in the show was to be able to accept supports. Because so often for young adults with mental health issues, I think they put a stigma on support, where everyone else would love support. I would love more support. Yeah. You know?
I often quote you and say, Oprah has lots of support. Right. I can't, you know. And then for parents, there needs to be a balance too. And part of what I try to do to help parents learn is that, you know, there's room for support, but there's also times where you have to let go. Yes. You have to let your kids, they have to take some risks. There's that dignity of risk that they really have to. And someone once told me at a workshop a long time ago, don't do for your children what they can do for themselves. And it's something that I try to really take personally with my own kids, and I try to remind parents too. You know, if they can do it, let them do it. And if they succeed, great. If they don't, then they'll try again, and just support them through it, because the more success they have and the more that they can do on their own, the better off they're going to be when they do leave home. And
absolutely, it's fantastic. That's based on an Abraham Lincoln quote. The worst thing you can do for something is something they can and should do for themselves.
Absolutely.
And it's very true. If you can support them along the process, help them learn the skills, then they own it. We just saw that. We just had some young adults in a very important meeting, and we kind of coached them and helped them define what was really important for them and find their voice and articulate what they wanted to say. And they did an amazing, fantastic job. But it's because they owned it, and they felt it, and they knew that it was important, and they knew that what they had to say was really critical. So it's kind of, it's a difficult place to be, because sometimes you're like, what if they fail? But it's not a failure, because they learned something, they tried, and now they have more resources.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's the having the belief in them that they can do it, and kids feel that.
Yeah.
Everyone feels that when you support them.
Yeah, it's hard for some parents. There's a fear in, you know, letting them. And I mean, you've come out and done some workshops with our parents, and, you know, you've done a great job. And I think the last one we did was about letting go and really trying to help parents to really learn. And I love your analogy with the butterfly and the cocoon. And, you know, if we help them too much, they're not going to be able to do it on their own. So, and, you know, for a lot of parents, they've been advocating for their kids for a long time. It's hard for them to step back, but we do a lot of work to really help them to learn that it's okay, you know, they can let their kids go and let them grow up and learn to do for themselves. And then we really work with the parents on taking care of themselves.
Right, absolutely. Let me just, we'll talk about the analogy for a minute. It's if you see, and young adults resonate with this a lot, so if you see a butterfly and you cut the butterfly out of the cocoon when it's still in its development stage, it dies because it can't use the muscles to develop its little legs.
It doesn't have the strength.
Doesn't have the strength, and people seem to really like that image.
Through the struggle, you gain strength.
Right. Right, and the mistakes are the only things that you can call your own. I don't know who said that, but it's very true. So helping the young adults learn how to, a lot of the young adults I work with, I help them to learn to make mistakes. And I say, it's not really a mistake if you learn something and you know how to move better next time. And they're like, okay. So I think that's a huge piece of it. But you mentioned self-care. That's also a big piece of it, because when parents take care of themselves, they're much more effective parents.
Absolutely. You know, I think it's Billy Joel in a song that says, if you don't take care of yourself, you're not good for anybody. And it's just really true. I mean, you and I have talked about this, the oxygen mask. If you're on an airplane, they tell you if you've got a child with you and the oxygen masks come down, put it on yourself first and then your child. Because you have to be able to breathe in order to help them breathe. Yes. And that's the real basic of it, but it's so true with anything. Yes. And so for parents that are so overwhelmed and feeling so isolated, you know, if you have a child that has cancer, your neighbors are knocking down your door to bring you casseroles and all this. If you have a child that has a mental health challenge, you don't get that. It's very isolating. And so parents really need to take care of themselves. Coming to PIN support groups and meeting other parents is one piece of that. But you know, we're going to do a series of workshops on self-care this year and really remind parents, sometimes it's as simple as stop and take a few deep breaths. You know, find some time quietly to meditate, exercise, eat healthy, get plenty of sleep. All those things are so important, because if you're not taking good care of yourself, you can't be a good parent and help your child or your young adult with what they need to face, because their challenges are very real and sometimes very difficult.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I know for myself, a lot of times I want to stay up late to send several more emails or accomplish something. But if I don't sleep well, then things look more bleak in the morning.
Absolutely.
You know, you're like, okay, and sometimes you send the wrong email if it's too late.
Yeah.
So I know for myself, I have to shut off the computer by 10 p.m. because otherwise it's not a good balance for me. Yeah. And usually it's much earlier, but I know that's my cutoff in terms of I'm a much better parent if I sleep better, if I wind down, and things like that. And it's hard for parents who are used to doing everything for their kids to kind of take a step back. But when they do, it helps the young adult take a step forward.
It really does, because then they're stronger. And it's hard because it's very overwhelming. And so, I mean, it can be a full-time job, you know, to help, I mean, especially with dealing with insurance and providers and, you know, I mean, sometimes you feel like you're just on the phone for hours and so I'm constantly reminding parents, you know, we talk about it at our support groups. There's one dad that comes frequently to my support group, and he always helps me to end the group by saying, so what are we going to do this week to take care of ourselves? He's really good about it. It's a good reminder for people, you know, because we really do need to do that. It's very important.
Now, what are the kind of the most concerns that you hear of parents that come to the support groups? What are kind of forefront on their mind?
Well, you know, I mean, it's a scary world. We've got lots of kids that are dealing with substance use, and that's a big concern. A lot of the parents that I work with, especially when they turn 18, kids, you know, can make their own decisions, and a lot of times they'll say, oh, I'm not going to take my medicine anymore, but I'm going to use something else, you know, and so that's a big concern. Turning 18 is a big discussion that I have with lots and lots of parents, you know, especially because the kids have been hearing for so long, you turn 18, you're an adult, you're an adult, you're an adult. Right. then all of a sudden they're 18, and what really changed from the day before till the day after?
Right, I still got the same clothes on, I still feel the same way.
You know, my son said to me, well, I can buy lottery tickets, but what else can I do? That's all, you know. So, I mean, but they have to be more responsible. And so with that comes, you know, dealing with providers and insurance and all that. And if they don't sign releases, the parents can't speak to anybody. So it becomes a sometimes difficult situation. I really try to encourage parents to talk to their kids before they turn 18 about, you know, these are some of the things that are going to happen. If you want my help, I want to help you, I want to support you, but you're going to need to let people know that I can talk to them. And to let the youth know and the providers know that if the parents partner with them, it's going to be a benefit to everybody. Because the parents, most of the parents that I want to work with really want to help, you know, and want to stay involved with their kids' lives. And to also know that they don't have to know everything, so that they can let a provider know, you can talk to my mother about, you know, looking for a job, but you don't have to talk to her about what's going on with my girlfriend. You know, so that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing.
Right, parameters, and they do that with healthcare too. You know, we can say, okay, you can talk about this part of my healthcare, but not that. So that's a really good strategy. And I would like to direct people to your website, because there's a lot of fantastic resources on your website, and I think we're going to show a graphic of that to have, you know, to show people where the different support groups are and what resources are there, and for more information. And do you want to tell people the phone number?
Yeah, our phone number is 508-947-8779. And you can get to any of our extensions through that, or you can always talk to Megan. She's our administrative assistant, and she's great. She can connect you with anybody that, you know, would be helpful, or any resources. And there is a lot of information on the website about resources in general, and a lot of transition. We have a whole page on transition.
Oh, great.
And we're constantly adding and updating.
Oh, fantastic. And you have a newsletter people can email you?
We do. We have an email newsletter. If they call Megan, they can give her their email address, and she can add them to our email list. It goes out once a month, and we always have information about our events in the newsletter and different things that are happening in the area, with all of our, you know, areas, support groups, and if we have specific workshops to different areas. Yeah, that's the best way to stay up on what's going on with PIN.
Fantastic. Yeah. No, and that's great. And I love the balance of, you have both trainings that help educate and draw out parents that are very interactive, and then you also have just support groups where parents teach other parents. And that's going to be the focus of one of your self-care pieces, is really having the parents share with other parents what's working for them.
Yeah, because I have a lot of parents that I've been working with for a long time that are doing a really good job of, and maybe not overall, but maybe in some specific areas. You know, I have a couple of parents that go out and they make sure they walk every day. If the weather's bad, they go to the mall. If it's good, they're outside. You know, and then I have, you know, another parent that always tries to make sure that there's, you know, healthy food and, you know, lots of fruits and vegetables. And, you know, there's some that do a really good job overall, but a lot of them, you know, have different areas that they're kind of experts at. And so I'm going to try to pull some of those parents together, do it like a panel discussion, so that we can really talk about what works for you and what doesn't, and get some question and answers going for parents.
No, that's fantastic. And it's just, it's little distinctions that you can make. You know, there was just a research study that said if you add things, the people who add things rather than take away, so adding more fruits and vegetables, more servings throughout the day, and adding exercise, are much more successful and keep the weight off for so much longer, because it's an adaptive way to their lifestyle. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So the research is saying add things. So very strategic things that you can do that are positive. And just sharing, you know, tips of parents who are doing great things.
And if they share with each other, they always come up with new ideas. And, oh, maybe I should try that. And, you know, it works great as a support group, so to do it on a bigger scale and try to really get a bigger group of parents together.
Right, and to think outside the box. I had one parent say to me, I'm really struggling because my young adult throws things in the trash and I don't like to look at everything. And I said, that must be very frustrating. And she was like, yeah. And I said, have you ever considered a trash with a holder on top that you can't see? You just put things in and it just swings back and forth. And she was like, that's a fantastic idea. Because she was you get kind of trapped in your one way of doing things. And you come head to head with your young adult. And we just, you know, I put a different scenario for $15.99, go to wherever and get this. And then she was like, I'm going to get that on the way home, you know. You know, it's just thinking around that. And I think that's what the parent support does. It gives another, because you get so tracked and you get entrenched with, you know, power struggles, which doesn't help anybody, but to take a step back and say, oh, this is what this parent is doing, this is what this parent is doing.
They share ideas all the time.
It's a fantastic, it's a fantastic resource. So let's think about, you have some wonderful ideas around not getting entrenched. We're talking about transitions, and a lot of young adults, you know, kind of come into 18, they want to make all their own decisions, and sometimes they're not fully equipped to do that. And some parents want to jump to guardianship. And that can seem like an easier route. Oh, I get to make controls, but there's also very much a downside to that. Can you
Yeah,
talk
we
about
talk
that?
about that all the time. I get lots of parents that ask, and I always say, really, really think about it, because the thing about guardianship is you're taking away their freedom, really. And what happens is it kind of becomes you against your young adult. And I think the bigger, most important part is your relationship.
Yes.
And what's going to happen to your relationship if you do that. So there's a lot of other things that you can put in place. You can have them sign a HIPAA release, and which will allow the doctor's offices to release information to you. They can sign a healthcare proxy so that you can help them make decisions.
Right.
Should there have to be a hospitalization or around medications or any of that kind of stuff. You can do power of attorney, you can do joint bank accounts. There's lots of things you can do. You know, they can talk to their doctor or their counselor, or, you know, even at school, they can decide that they want to make joint decisions with parents. If they're still in high school at 18, they can, for the education plan, they can work with their parents together to make decisions. And really that's the best way, because then the parents are helping them to make the decisions until they're ready to make them on their own. And like you said before, you know, even our typical 18-year-olds are not really ready to make their decisions on their own.
Exactly. How many 18-year-olds do we know that are on their own? You know,
they're not.
Very few. No. And we provide a lot of supports for young adults, and a lot of young adults are living with their parents, and a lot of older adults are going back in with this challenging economy. So finding ways to help, and if you can build skills, no matter what age, if you can start to teach budgeting. And I encourage a lot of parents to get one of those prepaid credit cards, so they can have in their wallet for emergencies, like a $20 or $40 or $100, whatever people think, access to money that's prepaid, so that if you're really worried about getting a credit card, but they have to start to learn, okay, well, what did I use on that? You have to start to learn, and the way you learn is to make choices and to be able to build skills. But you have to start somewhere.
Exactly. When
But
they're
with
little,
the dignity of risk. Yeah.
When they're little, we do for them, and as they get older, we do with them.
Yes.
So that as they get even older, then they can do for themselves.
I love that. I love
and
that.
we can
the
just
different
be there
stages.
to support them.
Absolutely, because they can, building the skills, and they can learn and try out different things. And then they remember, oh, okay, I only have this amount on my card. Okay, well then I know I have to either recharge the card, or I can't do that, or maybe I shouldn't put myself in that. So it's really helping, you know, individuals learn. And I think that's really important, where it's a little bit more challenging to work with them, and I like the way you phrase that, but it's ultimately more valuable because you're engaging in the communication and you're doing joint decision making, and no one person has the upper hand.
Exactly.
So I think that's really important. So I would like to remind people again of your website. Well, I'd like to put that up one more time so people have those resources.
Great.
I think that's very key.
Thank you.
And I just think we'll end with, what advice would you give other parents who are kind of struggling with young adults? Kind of what's a positive first step for them? What would be if they're...
Well, get support. If you don't have support, find a support. You know, our support groups. There's other support groups in the state, and if they're not in the Southeast area, they can go through PAL. We're under PAL's umbrella, so they can go through PAL, and PAL can also help them. But they can even call us, and we can help them to locate support groups in the area. But I think find support. You know, that's the most important thing, because it's hard. You know, it takes a village to raise. It does.
No, it does.
It really
takes
does.
a whole community.
And,
absolutely.
You know, so to find other parents that are struggling, and to share with them and learn from them, and, you know, support each other is really huge. And remember to take care of themselves, and, you know, that they do have to let go.
Absolutely, absolutely. We just remind people that PAL is the Parent Professional Advocacy League. And if people want to check us out, we're actually on YouTube. I forget to remind people, but we're actually still under Employment for All. We're at www.employmentforall. We're actually at YouTube, /Employment for All. And you can put in different topics. And we have a lot of great people in recovery, a lot of great providers, a lot of great individuals who can share their resources around working with young adults with mental health issues. So fantastic. So thank you very much, Tresa, for being on the show with us.
Thank you for
You've shared a lot
having
of great resources and helped us think a lot about how to support parents and young adults with mental health issues.
Great. Thank you.
And I'd like to say thank you to our viewers for tuning in again, once again, to Picking Up the Pieces, where we dare to persevere and help young adults reach their full potential. And we'd like you to look for someone who might just be in need of that full potential. We'd like to also say thank you to the Department of Mental Health for sponsoring our show. And I'd like to say, this is Kim Bissett saying thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.